background. I've seen
Oh,
that before.
yeah, I might have stolen it, but don't tell anyone.
I won't.
My secret is safe with you, right?
Yep. Everybody else watching.
Cool. No one else tell anyone.
Yeah.
But thank you for being here. I'm Alex, and I have a YouTube and also an Instagram Love Sugar show, and I'll be the one interviewing you.
Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for
Yeah.
taking the time.
Well, thanks for being here. Because without you, there's no interview. So
Right. Without you, people don't know we exist. So it's like it's gonna work out great.
for sure. So the first question I ask anyone that I always interview is how's everything going? Not just musically, but also like just personally.
So far so good. As we record this, it's record release day, so it's kind of like Christmas, your birthday, and then the busiest day you've had at work, all wrapped into one.
Sounds exciting.
Personally, things are cool. I live somewhere very cold, but spring has started to sprung and snow's starting to melt, and you know, changes are in the air.
When you say cold, I always think of Minnesota first.
Yeah, I'm in northern New York State, which is about the same climate. So yeah.
Yeah, I lived in Minnesota for 4 years, so I know all about the nice cold climates.
Yeah. Good guitar playing, stay inside and write music weather. So,
Yeah, it works out, right?
that
So I know you mentioned the album is coming out today, and for anyone who doesn't know that, today's release day, and I'll make sure to have all the links below so you can just click and order it. Makes it really easy for you guys. But how do you feel about it, knowing that it's release day?
um honestly, I'm just relieved. You know, from the time we wrote the first guitar riffs and said, "Hey, I think we have the start of a song here," to the point of having people with records arriving in the mail and being able to listen to it is a long road. And so when the day finally comes and it has come today, it's a big relief that that part of it's over. And now it's on to recharging the creative battery and then, doing the things we have to do as a band to get the word out that we exist and that the record exists. Like doing this, like playing shows, maybe get some cool tour dates, and just seeing what happens next. What will the record do for us as individuals and as a band? That's the next question to be answered.
Mm-hmm. Well, I listened to the album, I believe it was maybe a week ago, and for anyone who hasn't, it is really good. It was just like what I was having like kind of a bad day, and I listened to the album, I'm like, wow, this is really good. So it helped me improve my day. So it is definitely an album that you need to listen to.
That's good to hear. I'm glad that that has had that effect on you versus going, what is this awful stuff, and start throwing things across the room. So good. I'm glad we could help you.
So is there anything that you would have changed about the album?
Um, no. Well, during the tracking session, the first time we went to the studio, I was really sick.
Oh, no.
Like a lot of work already, and then to be really sick, made it that much more challenging. But it's one of those things like that. That's just like me being a baby, I think. Uh, it it's I sort of treat these things the way I treat life, like whatever we had to go through to get to this point where we're all very satisfied, um, was part of the journey that you have to accept. And if you're happy with the way things are, then it was all worth it. So, yeah, so far, no. If you ask me in a year, I might be like, oh, I wish I did this instead of that at, 2 minutes and 45 seconds into whatever song. But right now, I've given it a few listens recently. I went a long time without listening to it because I just had had enough. And
Yeah.
there's still much to be proud of. So
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I listened to it the other day and I thought it was fantastic. So, and I feel like if you go into what can we change, that can kind of, there's always something you can find and then you're just never happy. So it's good that you're happy with what you have already.
yeah. Yeah, we have a habit too of like if something is a little imperfect on the album, we keep it on purpose because you could go nuts trying to make everything perfect anyway. And that's what makes it sound like, a band and not a computer. So
Very true. I don't think a computer would be as exciting to interview either. It just would kind of sit there. So,
I give it a couple of years. We'll never know the difference soon.
so what is one song on the album that kind of capture like the spirit of the band?
Well, if you've never heard us before, I would say Blind Wolf because it's just that's also a reason why we picked it as the first single was it just sort of introduces somebody who doesn't know us to what we are about in a way that hopefully gets them curious to hear more. In terms of what encapsulates our journey to date as a band over 10 years, man, that's that's tough. I think one of our more adventurous songs is the last song on the record, When the Will Becomes a Chain.
Hmm.
But I could have a different answer for this any day of the week, just depending on how I feel. I feel like on this record, every song kind of stands as a unique sounding thing too, which is something we've worked towards. But yeah, I'll say Blind Wolf to circle back around.
It's okay. I won't hold you to it. Like if it's different
Thanks.
tomorrow, it's okay. So the next question would be, what is your favorite song on the album? And I know it can change, so I'm not going to hold you to that one either.
Yeah, I guess it's a toss up between King of Tides and Heat Lightning. Heat Lightning was kind of a for us it seemed like a ambitious song when it started because for me the a lot of the more quiet or dynamic parts were influenced by things that have nothing to do with heavy metal and the challenge of getting those parts to fit into a song that is still undeniably a heavy metal song is something I'm quite proud of. And then King of Tides to me when you listen to it it kind of reminds me of like a you're watching like a miniature movie or something if you close your eyes. The music is very cinematic and the lyrics are very narrative driven. And I'm quite proud of, even though a lot of the music is quite simple, the way we executed it with the level of conviction that we did uh, was something that everybody really dug into to make that song really powerful.
So with the song Heat Lightning, is there something about it that you chose to use it as like the album name?
It's really simple. I thought it was the most kind of eye-catching and catchy name for a hard rock heavy metal record. So every album we've done, we've named it after one of the songs for one reason or another. We wanted to make a statement with the title, but while having it have that classic, like this is one of the songs on the record too.
Yeah.
It's like this, in my mind, when you're thinking of like going to a record store or seeing an advertisement in a magazine like Heat Lightning just has this immediate kind of grab to it, I think.
So is it more just kind of like playing around with words and you're like, oh, this sounds really catchy, like no story behind it. I thought maybe one day you're outside and you're like, oh, Heat Lightning. That sounds like a great idea.
Well, there's a lyrical concept to the song.
Hmm.
Much like Lights On, our last record, is a song title, while also being the album title and so on. Um, I guess Heat Lightning as a concept is just the idea of seeing something in the distance that could affect you soon, and you having to decide what you're going to do about that. If you're going to do nothing, or if you're going to stand up and do something.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thanks for sharing that with us. So were there any challenges that you faced like during the recording process?
Um, Not well. Outside of the normal stuff, no. I mean, we had a really great team of two engineers working with us. So almost every record I've ever made with any band, there's this point during the recording session where something's not working, and it takes
Mm-hmm.
like an hour to figure out what it is and or fix it.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't happen this time, and I don't know why. It's like there's almost like a positive omen. Aside from getting through, the 12-hour days of playing and getting things done, while also being pretty under the weather, not really. Because when we went into the studio, we had a very clear vision because what we do with every record is we record the album ourselves as a demo, like as a whole album with all the parts laid out. And then we discuss what we like, what we don't like, what we might change. And so when we go to the studio, it's really about using the tools and using the space in a way to, you know, capture the vision with the utmost clarity and precision.
So it sounds like the secret behind success is having a really good roadmap of what you're going to do.
For us, it is. Yeah, some bands get away with doing stuff off the cuff, and we're a very deliberate, well thought out band when it comes to songwriting and recording and stuff like that. Just it's what works for us, and it's because we're a three piece. It's sort of necessary to have stuff planned out in a way where we can always sound big or dynamic. No matter, despite the fact that there's only three of us.
And I know you mentioned you guys have been doing this for a while and that the days are really long. How do you push through that as a band? Like, because that seems like a lot.
It's it's a lot of work, I guess. I think it's harder for the engineers than it is for us because for us, put, it's no different than like writing a song or playing a show in the sense that this is what we do, this is what we live for. So if I'm in the
Yeah.
recording studio doing something that somebody else might consider quite tedious, in the back of our minds, the vision is what's pushing us through that tedium to kind of get through it all. And the fact that, these studio we were using was not, it was a very premium studio. And so we have that in the back of our mind of like, we got to make the most out of every minute we're here. We can't just be sitting around for an hour and a half trying to decide what's for dinner. Like we got to just be working and, get that stuff done. But it's exhilarating because it feeds on itself,
Mhm.
get momentum, like especially early on in the session, things just were sounding so cool that we're like, all right. So the momentum builds on itself. And then, 4 or 5 days later, we're like, oh my God, what's, look at what we've done. This is amazing.
So it's kind of like the dynamic between the band members.
Yeah, exactly. Like everybody in this band has a really incredible work ethic. And it's something that makes me incredibly happy to have partnered with the two people I'm in the band with because everybody, I don't know if it's like a life in New York thing where we're just used to grinding all the time. And so why wouldn't we grind at the thing that is most important and near and dear to our hearts as, artists? It's not a vacation. It's like let's put everything we got into this because, this is what we're all about.
So it's kind of like the creative process. Like, how does each band member kind of contribute to the creation of this album in particular?
Well, typically in terms of songwriting, more often than not, and in this particular record's case, it was probably all the songs start with a few guitar riffs from me, um, in varying levels of, completion or structure, depending on how inspired I am by an idea or how I may need them to help me get through an idea.
Mhm.
So I'll bring a few guitar ideas that work well together to rehearsal, hear what Nate's doing on drums, hear what Erica's thinking lyrically, vocally about, what's a verse, what's a chorus. Sometimes I'll play a song um, where I have a particular drum beat in my head, but I don't tell Nate what that is. I want to hear what he comes up with first, because
Mhm.
oftentimes he's come up with something where I go, oh, damn, that sounds killer. Like the main verse riff in Blind Wolf was not supposed to be this plodding, straightforward heavy metal hard rock ripping thing. It was gonna, in my mind, I thought I wrote like a ZZ Top sounding riff, but I didn't
Mhm.
tell him that. And he's going ticka 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 ticka, and I'm like, oh, actually, that's better. So we give each other a lot of space and latitude to help each other with our individual parts and how they relate to one another. Because ultimately, the song is what we have to serve best. And so we're all about all three of us serve the song first, and then we indulge ourselves within the confines of that.
So it kind of sounds like you guys like bounce ideas off of each other, kind of like a pinball to get like the best ideas.
Yeah, a lot of the time for sure. It's a lot of again, it's sort of like the recording thing we were talking about earlier, where it's a momentum thing where um some of our songwriting is quite simple. It's very verse and chorus oriented. But where we really spend a lot of time are like the little details, like when we hit the transition, is it before we go to the one or anticipating the one? All these little details are what makes three people sound like a powerful force, despite the limited, amount of personnel. And yeah, it's a very collaborative effort. It's a very democratic effort. No, if somebody in the band doesn't like an idea and doesn't feel strongly that they can get behind it, uh, and we've tried everything we can to change that and it doesn't work, then that idea goes away.
That's awesome.
We all have to believe in it.
So it sounds like a really big like team effort. Like everyone has to be on board.
Exactly. 100%.
Well, that's awesome. So I know we talked about the studio process going really smoothly this time around. Did you try anything new this time on this album that you haven't tried previously?
Yeah, I mean, we tried a new studio and new engineers for the first time since we made our demo 10 years ago. So our first three records were recorded with our friend Colin Marston, who had a studio in Queens. This
Mhm.
time around, we chose some different engineers who are also friends of the band and a different studio, a much more traditional studio with the big analog console, the big fancy control room, all the cool gear that if we wanted to afford ourselves, we'd have to sell everything we own and still couldn't. Did you know
Mhm.
a microphone could cost $12,000? Because I didn't. But anyway, uh,
Wow.
so that approach was different. And then as a guitar player, I changed up what instruments I was using, how I was approaching that. Each song you hear has different guitars than the song before it in some
Oh, wow.
combination. And then different guitar amps that I have acquired since the last record that are a little bit closer to the sound that's rolling around in my brain that I'm trying to get through the speaker when you drop the needle. So we've been around so long that we know what we're trying to do, and we've gotten a lot better through the years at getting closer and closer to the unattainable perfection.
Well, that's really cool to know and scary that a microphone can cost 12 grand.
Yeah, I know.
But
Try walking by it. Like you just be walking by it on the stand and be like, I'm not touching that.
so for anyone who hasn't listened to the album yet, is there a theme throughout the album?
There's a few themes. One of which would be humanity's relationship to nature and how at this current point in time, maybe we're quite detached from our relationship to nature for reasons of perhaps necessity, perhaps arrogance, perhaps any number of reasons. Um, and just pointing that out and saying, "Hey, man, what? Maybe, maybe we ought to think about this for a minute." And then another one is just directly inspired by the American sort of right-wing Christo-fascist sort of people who are using religion as a way to oppress people.
Mm-hmm.
So that theme is throughout in like say Let's Spill Some Blood, and then King of Tides might be like the origin story of religious fanaticism hitting American shores. So that's a theme that goes throughout. But we try to universalize those themes because we have an international audience and we
Mm-hmm.
want our lyrics to be universal enough where people anywhere can relate to them because they're human themes. They're just expressed through the lens of our own experiences, where we live and the time we live in.
That is true, though. A lot of people would rather be inside on their smartphones or their tablets
Yeah,
instead of out in nature. And nature is free.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So, how do you keep the balance of like old school metal sounding while still evolving as a band?
Just kind of happens naturally, I guess. We all, I mean, the band's sound foundationally is that old school metal, hard rock, classic rock thing. But we all listen to all kinds of different stuff collectively and individually.
Hmm.
Like And you know, we being from Brooklyn, there's all kinds of music that you just get exposed to through other people's apartment windows or car 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 doors and bouncing around. So it's just a conglomeration of trying to add new elements because we're just musically curious about how far we can take the band anyway. So while we want a through line through every song and every record, that yeah, it's definitely the three of us here uh,
Mhm.
betray what got us that following in the first place. We still want to not play the same song over and over again or write the same song over and over again. So we just try to expand upon what we've built on while staying true to what we are.
So as a band, would you say like there's a goal that you guys are going for, or do you just like want to just keep playing and see where it goes?
Yeah, more or less. Like when we first started, we were just three people who were recording songs we had written together and putting them on Bandcamp. So the idea that we'd be putting out a record on Metal Blade Records 10 years later and planning a European tour in spring and doing all this stuff wasn't a thought. So we've always taken that approach of are we when we leave the studio, when we approve the final mixes or masters of the album, are the three of us satisfied? The
Mhm.
answer is always yes by the time we get there. And that means we've already done it. We've already won. And then, lucky for us, when we put this stuff out into the world, we have gotten energy and reception back to us that has allowed us to have some pretty extraordinary experiences.
Wow. So how do you feel about that? I mean, going from like just people who just wanted to make music and Metal Blade Records is a pretty big label.
Yeah. It's really just humbling more than anything. It for me, it fills me with gratitude for all kinds of reasons, but you know, mostly just the idea that like just because you play an instrument and write music, it doesn't entitle you to any kind of success. That's not up to you. Like whether people like what you do or not is just going to be something that happens to whatever degree it does. And so the fact that the three of us creating stuff that we like together has led to this kind of, you know, experience over the last 10 years is something that, you know, we don't necessarily feel like it's an entitlement to us. So we enjoy the present. We're grateful for the past and we're looking forward to what's next. If this record came out today and nobody listened to it, it would be disappointing because of the people involved behind the scenes
Yeah.
investing their time and their money. But ultimately, we are proud of the record, and so we already won. And now everything that comes after is just a real bonus for us.
Well, that's an awesome way to look at it for sure.
Yeah.
Like, really. So, kind of a little bit of a harder question, but if you had to describe the album with three emojis, what emojis would those be?
Emojis, huh? Okay. Well, I would hope one of them would be at the end of the record. There's the mind blown. Like, hopefully, the listener has their mind blown. But that's me being optimistic. Oh, wow. This is a really interesting question. So that would be one. Maybe something explode, one of those explosion ones.
Hmm.
But then also, I guess the praying hands to symbolize some of the themes on the record, as well as our gratitude for being able to make it in the first place.
Yeah, there's so many emojis, so I know that would have
I
been
know
like
I'm
a hard
like,
question
but should I get my phone and see what's available? Go
because
to
I
my
know they had like a new update, added a whole bunch more, so there's a
yeah.
lot more now.
And then there's the avatars, and then there's the stickers. I mean, there's
Yeah,
so many ways to stay on your phone and not go outside into nature, like you were saying.
for sure. I do have one last question here for you. Is there any message that you'd like to give fans that have been there from the beginning, people who just are hearing you for the first time, or anyone interested in listening to your music?
Yeah, if you're just hearing us for the first time and you like what you hear, I will just say, welcome to our dysfunctional family of, you know, at this time it's small but very loyal fan base that we have. If you've been there from the beginning or any point in between, really it's just all the gratitude and thanks go to everybody who buys the record, buys merch, comes and says hi at the merch table, sends us beautiful messages on our social media, and there's so many people that have nothing to do with the band itself that make a band function between the fans and the record label, the booking agency, all that stuff. So again, we're just grateful for all of it.
Well, that's great. Like I said, I listened to the album. I'll put the link below so anyone can just order it or take a listen to it. Makes it really easy for you guys. And the album does release today, which is Pi Day. It's from Metal Blade
It
Records.
is. I just realized that. I've been a little distracted today, but
Yeah, so happy Pi Day to everyone watching this. And the album
Friday, Friday.
exactly. And it's also the album name is Heat Lightning. So make sure to check it out. And as soon as I upload everything, I'll tag you the band on Instagram so you can check it out too.
Cool. Awesome. And we'll share. And thanks everybody who's watched the interview and checks us out. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for taking your time for the interview. Without you, there would be no interview. So I really appreciate you taking your time because this is something I love doing.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time to expose us to more people. We appreciate it.
No problem. Enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully, it gets a little bit warmer in New York.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
All right, take care.